a podcast about amazing people from an incredible state. Amazing Arizonans with Mike Broomhead.
The whole point of Amazing Arizonans is to tell great stories from here in Arizona. If you're a veteran here, maybe anywhere in the country, but certainly here, you know this name. It's Paula Pedene. Thanks for doing this.
You're welcome. I'm honored to be here.
This is, I'm so glad I get to have this conversation with you. I've known about you for so long, and then I got to meet you years ago. Your advocacy for veterans, being a veteran yourself, it cost you your career.
Yeah, it did.
And if people hadn't known what an advocate you were, it could have cost you your reputation.
Yes.
But fortunately, and I want to hear all of these stories, you had such and have such an impeccable reputation in the veteran community, you overcame that. Because when the stories were coming out, let's go back to this. When the VA scandal broke, it broke here in Phoenix. When the veterans were not getting the care and there were fraudulent paperwork and there were other things happening, you were one of the key whistleblowers. And they did everything they could to ruin your reputation.
They did.
Can you tell a little bit of that story?
Yeah, so it actually started, I actually, unfortunately, had two whistleblower experiences. The first one, I came out of okay, I thought, but it was the second one that, you're correct, cost me my career. The first one, we had a new boss that had come in, the boss that we all loved, that said to all of us every day, I don't care what the policy says. If it comes between a choice between the policy and the veteran, you rule in favor of the veteran. And then if anybody gets in trouble, they will come to me. And he empowered us that way. He retired. A new guy came in, and he was so the opposite. He was all about himself. I told the associate director at the time, I said, he's like a peacock. I have to run around and fluff his feathers all the time. And, he was really hard on me because I'm a disabled Navy veteran. They found out in the Navy I have an eyesight problem that causes tunnel vision. So I really have no peripheral vision at all. So I couldn't drive. I'd have to take rides with him. I'd have to use my cane. And he's Hispanic, and he wanted a cute young Hispanic thing in there. And I am not that model. I don't fit that. And, it wasn't about the merits of the person in the job. It was what he wanted. But anyways, we found out he was mismanaging the fee basis funds, and he was really causing a hostile work environment. So Dr. Sam Foote and I and a couple other employees shared that internally with the Office of the Inspector General and the network director.
Now, was this anonymously, or were your
No,
names?
we put our names on this one, okay? And she had heard about the complaints from many others and was just looking for somebody to put something on paper. So we had the courage to do so, and she did her due diligence and was able to get him to retire. Okay, so that was number one. I had to go through an administrative investigative board, share all the evidence I had, because I gave Sam evidence. He had his own evidence. Other employees had their evidence, and we thought we were done. We were like, okay, dust our hands off.
Right.
Let's move forward. Right? Well, forward happened to be backwards because we got Sharon Hellman. She was the first female director that the medical center had in its 60-year history. So me, being a female public affairs officer, was all excited that we had a woman in charge. I got her all set up with wonderful public relations stuff that you do, column in the Arizona Republic, met with the mayor, met with the governor, met with Betsy Bayless, who was the county, hospital director at the time, brought her in all kinds of things. And unfortunately, she had found out about that prior whistleblower experience and started keeping an eye on me and Dr. Foote. And that's when I realized that. She got there in February. I realized in about July that they were monitoring me. And then in August, they were really starting, July and August, they were making my life miserable, Sam's life miserable. And I knew something was going to happen, but I didn't know what. So I started keeping records. And then, there's lots of, they call whistleblowers get to die by thousands of paper cuts.
Right.
Because it is, Mike. It's stupid things. It's like, you were 5 minutes late today. You know, you were in the restroom too long. You were talking in the hallway too long. It's like, you want leave, but I'm not going to approve it until 5 minutes before you have to leave. And I'm legally blind. I mean, my husband's out there waiting, or I have to catch a cab, you know, and you can't do that in 5 minutes and get to a doctor's appointment. So it was all kinds of, they'd cut me out of meetings, they cut my funding and my staffing. I went from 3 staff and a $225,000 budget, which isn't a lot for it was a $80 million industry at the time. And to me and a volunteer, that was it. That was all I had. And I'm trying to run the program. And then they said, you can no longer work any additional hours outside of your tour of duty, which is false. I'm a salaried employee. If I need to work 80 hours, you've got me. Right. You know, and I'm dedicated. So I'm working those hours. And they told me I couldn't. So then they started, like, if they saw me sending an email after hours, if somebody told them, they would counsel me on that. You sent an email on Saturday morning, da-da-da-da-da. And I kept telling them, there is no way I'm going to get my job done unless I do this. And that's what they wanted. They wanted me to fail, and I wouldn't fail that way. What I failed in was trying to do everything all at once and keep the program running. That's really what hurt me.
But when you exposed, and it wasn't just you by yourself, and to let people know that may not know the story, the Phoenix VA, this broke nationally, the Phoenix VA was falsifying appointment records for veterans. Yes. And it was making it look as if veterans were getting care much sooner than they were actually getting care. Yeah. So they were falsifying documents at the beginning of the process and then entering them in a computer at a much later date to make it look as if they were inside this window. And not only her, but other managers were getting performance bonuses because it showed that they were doing things. Right. And so when that broke, just to give you a little background of what we were doing, when I was on the air, when that broke, I was so infuriated because I think it's a nonpartisan issue. Americans believe veterans have done their duty, and we owe them the medical care that they've earned. Yeah. And we just assumed, because everybody felt that way, that the VA was a well-oiled machine.
We used to be.
Well, yeah. But so when this story broke, I began reaching out to members of Congress.
Oh, thank you.
I got a call back immediately from Senator McCain's office.
Oh, good.
And his office said, the senator will be anywhere you need him to be at any time to expose this issue.
Oh, how wonderful.
And through his office, they set up a press conference at the Burton Barr Library.
I was there.
Okay. Yeah. And invited the international media.
Right.
And
they showed up.
When we started, we were on a stage about this tall, but we were up on a platform. And I said to all the veterans in the crowd, I said, raise your hand if you've waited longer than 30 days. And everybody raised their hand.
Everybody did.
60 days, 90 days, 180 days. And it wasn't until I got to 1 year before a significant number of hands went down. And I was standing like this, like you and I are sitting, but about this far from Senator McCain. And I looked over at him, and his face was bright red, and his teeth were clenched. He was so angry. But I knew then, when I saw those veterans, that this was something that needed to be fixed, because the veterans I knew loved the care they were getting when they got care, but they weren't getting in.
Correct.
And you're the one with a group of people that blew the whistle that ended up having this have ripple effects across the country.
Right.
So can you talk about that and what it did to you in your career?
Yeah, so it kind of relates to that first whistleblower experience. So she takes me out of my job for a minor infraction in December. Okay, her and Lance do. They've been working on a scheme to get me out of my job. Is this when
they sent you to the basement?
They sent me to the basement library.
That's a real story. I say that to people. They think I'm figurative. They sent you to the basement.
It's like a playbook that the VA has. They take you out of wherever you are. They take away your email. They take away your phone. They take away your office, and they banish you to the basement. And whatever little room they can find in the basement is where you work. Fortunately for me, all the little other rooms were occupied, so I got to go to the library.
Okay.
Okay. But while I'm in the library, I'm hearing about the waits and delays from the patients. See, in my PR job, I wasn't meeting with the patients every day. I'd touch base with them on interactions. But every day in the library, I'm checking in their books. I'm checking out their books. I'm giving them papers. I'm signing them onto the computer. Several veterans are indigent. They don't have computer access. They don't have phones. They don't have internet. So the library is a place they can go and get all those services. We're hearing about the waits and delays. I'm riding in a van pool with the gal that's keeping the paper list, and she's nervous about the paper list, and we're talking about it. She picks me up first in the morning and drops me off last in the end of the day in the carpool route. And there are some days, Mike, she's crying. And I'm like, we have got to stop them. So I start writing anonymous letters. This was in April of 2013.
Okay.
Okay? Because they have also put an illegal and unethical gag order on me. You are not allowed to talk to anyone. They could have said, you are not allowed to talk to anyone about your case. But they said, you are not allowed to talk to anyone. And my lawyer said, we can't have you talk, Paula, because if you do, they can write you up for insubordination and fire you under disciplinary action, which we didn't want.
Right.
So, I'm writing all these anonymous letters, white gloves, and the printer.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
paranoid. I am so paranoid. But you know what the funny thing was? The funny thing is, I'm in the van pool. We're kind of talking about what we're doing, and there's a blue mailbox in front of the VA on the 3rd Street side. I have somebody else open the mailbox for me, and I'm dropping.
Oh my gosh!
In the mail. There's so much fun stuff that people don't get to hear about.
But
it led to that.
But
yeah.
And I guess maybe I didn't explain this well enough at the beginning. You have at this time an impeccable reputation.
Oh, yes. We are the number one public relations program in the nation.
You don't have a blemish on your record. You are well respected. And I knew this because of my connection to veterans organizations. Everybody in the veteran community knew you. And you had this impeccable reputation.
Well,
so when things started to go south for you, there were many people that were suspicious of what was being said about you because of the reputation you had built.
Correct. And they couldn't get a hold of me because I had given everybody my VA cell phone number, and that's a number they took that number, the work number, and when people would call up to the VA hospital, they'd say she no longer works there. That's what they lied. So it was all this big cover up of we're going to make, and in the emails, it was like no name. It came from no name for months until we could advocate to get my name back on the email. So it was kind of, there's all this stuff that's happening. And then in December, in August, so a year after, let's see, anyways, in August of 2013, I talked to Dr. Foote and I say, Sam, my letters are going nowhere. I'm telling him what I'm doing. He's like, I've heard of waits and delays. I put him in touch with the gal that had the wait list, and he said, let me do my own research. He does his own research. The veterans are coming into his office. How long did it take you to get in here? Goes 9 months.
Yeah.
What we heard at the library.
I mean, this is fraud.
It's horrible. Absolutely horrible. A lot of these people have no choice. They can only go to the VA. They don't have choices, or they love the VA so much they will never leave it. That's kind of the issue. But Sam does his own research, and he writes 3 letters to the OIG, and the OIG comes in and investigate, and they do nothing. And he calls me up at the beginning of December, and he says, Paula, I'm going to have to retire to blow this whole thing wide open. I stood up from my chair in the library, and I said, Sam, I will help you. And I put him in touch with Rick Romley because he needed media training. Rick Romley.
Now, was he the county attorney then?
He was a county attorney at the time. No, he was retired.
He was retired.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But
Rick's been a guest on the podcast.
And just a wonderful interview. veteran, highly decorated, Purple Heart, done so much for our country. He took care of Sam. I put Sam in touch with my employee representative because I have to file an EEO case and a whistleblower case and try to get myself straightened out with the VA. And so I have a career of some sort to come back to. And I put him in touch with him. And then, and I put him in touch with Eric Schnell, who was the SVAC, Senate Veterans Affairs Committee lead for Congressman Jeff Miller.
Okay.
And once we did that, all the pieces started falling into place. I got Sam in touch with the Arizona Republic. He had an editorial board meeting. He met Dennis Wagner at the editorial board. So all these things are happening and nobody knows the wait time scandal's going on. This is all happening in 2013. The wait time scandal got exposed in 2014.
Yeah.
So finally, Sam retires. He's talking to all the media. He's all ready to go. And the reporters are ready. We've got all the reporters ready. They have one source, which is Sam. They need a second source. The VA will not comment. Okay? They went to the VA. The VA would not comment. So the second source had to come through Jeff Miller. On April 9th of 2014, he said, and Mr. Undersecretary, if I were to have asked you that 40 patients may have died while waiting for care at Phoenix, would you say that was any part of your look back? And the camera lights start flashing. No, Mr. Chairman, I would not. And that was it. That was CNN's source. That was the Republic source. They ran. I mean, literally, Dennis was calling me. I'm running to to get this out. Blah 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 blah. And the next day, all over that night, those who could post online, it was and it was like day after day, and then exposure after exposure. I mean, they were doing so much. There was problems in urology. There was problems in primary care. There was problems in specialty care. I mean, it was all over. We thought it was just in Phoenix. Oh, no. The IG investigated, 111 of the 156 hospitals. But I want to go back to what you said about the Burton Bar Library, because that was such a sad day. So sad. I'm there with a gag order. Okay, I can't speak to anybody. I'm seeing the veterans. I'm hearing you. I'm seeing Senator McCain. I'm like, we have got to stop them. That's all I could think of. We have got to stop them. And that was step one, Mike.
But wouldn't you say, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but wouldn't you agree, and I want to defend some of the people at the VA, because wouldn't you agree that the vast majority of the people inside the VA are like you?
They're phenomenal.
Their lives are dedicated to these veterans.
We choose to work at VA because we want to serve our nation's veterans. I could have had other jobs, I mean, lots of the doctors can have other jobs and the staff, but, there's something about working at the VA up until that point in time that was really just wonderfully noble, and to see it fall, especially as a PR person that had worked for 20 years to build the Phoenix VA image up to a stellar place, and to see it crash like that was horrific.
But the goal of that was to expose the problem so it would get fixed.
Unethical leaders.
Yeah.
This isn't a VA issue. It's an unethical leadership issue. That's what it really is. We have a dearth of leadership out there. People don't know. I don't know where they've lost the way about morals and values and the honor code and, not telling lies and trying to cover things up and, get rid of the arrogance, introduce modesty, get rid of the greed, introduce humility and kind of, I don't know. Let's go back to my handshake with you means something. It shouldn't have to be this 1,000-page legal document that's a disclaimer that says, okay, well, you met with Mike Broomhead on the podcast today.
Right.
You didn't have that, but...
But the stories were so heartbreaking.
Oh, they were so sad.
There were stories in the media, and there were a lot of people calling it sensationalizing the problem, but it was exposing the problem. There were veterans that were committing suicide in the parking lot of the VA and as a protest to say this is what's happening.
And staff, yes. And one of the worst cases was with Daniel Summer. Daniel Summer was a mental health patient that went to the VA ER emergency room and did not get the care he needed. I wrote about him in one of my anonymous letters and, went home and said, I just can't do this. I can't take the pain from this anymore. I can't take the pain I'm causing you to his parents. And he committed suicide. And now they were the ones that met with Senator Sinema and created the Daniel Summers Act to help prevent suicide prevention. So it opened a lot of wounds, I think, that the VA had internally that it was kind of burying. But, the fact is it's unethical leaders. It's not the VA as a whole. It's a wonderful, noble institution.
Was there ever a second thought or a regret about exposing it?
Oh, so many times. Because not necessarily about exposing it, but my fear was, what would they do to me? By this time in the case, I'm a basket case. I've been punished, humiliated, defeated at every turn I take for 15 months. By this point in time, I still have 7 months to go. And, it affected me. I was depressed all the time. I just think about it and I get teary-eyed. My husband was very angry. He has high blood pressure. He was going to Grand Canyon University getting his master's degree so he could teach. That kind of got interrupted. He finished, but he couldn't do the teaching because it was all, I have to help Paula. Mm-hmm. My sons were in high school. Both my sons' graduations. I was in the basement. It was just, and they have anxiety and depression today. The money, oh my gosh. I mean, it was, the legal bills were mounting. $85,000. We're taking out home equity loans. We're doing borrowing against, and that wasn't the end of the legal bills. It got higher than that. And you're just doing everything you can to hold it together. And the reason I like to talk about all of this is because I tell people it is only through God's grace that I am here. God's grace put me in the basement. As much as I didn't like it, I needed to be there to help expose, because look at what happened. Who had the connectivity? Mm-hmm. It was me. I had the person in the wait list. I had the patients that we could document. I knew Dr. Foote from the prior whistleblower experience.
And what a trusted ally he was for you.
He's such a great man. He is. I just saw him a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, we keep in touch. When
you people don't understand the gravity of this because it was the undersecretary that was eventually fired.
Yeah. Well, he, unfortunately for us, the undersecretary was a permanent employee, so he got to retire. Okay. And he should have retired.
Who was it
they
that
should
got
make
fired?
It disgrace.
Somebody else got fired.
The secretary.
So
President Obama had to eventually accept the resignation of Eric Shinseki.
I remember getting a phone call, and I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I remember I was in Dallas, and I got a phone call from a D.C. phone number I didn't recognize. And I answered the phone, and they said, "This is Senator McCain's office. The senator would like to speak to you." That scares you a little.
It does.
Yeah. And so as well as I had gotten to know Senator McCain, he never called me. I talked to his people,
Mm-hmm. Right.
And he got on the phone and said, "This is happening, and this secretary is going to be..."
He had to go.
But the gravity in that moment and my small role of talking about it on the air in press conferences, I thought of you, and I thought of those people that had risked everything to expose this. And for people that don't understand the power that money wields and everything else, that was an earth-shaking time.
It is.
And you were the key. You were the linchpin in a lot of that. So that time for you must have been terrifying until the tables turned in your favor.
Yes. And the greatest thing, we felt bad, Sam and I both did, about Secretary Shinseki because his people were hiding the information from him. We had sent letters up and he was just a step too late. He had sent an investigator in to the Phoenix VA, but it got superseded by some of the other investigations. So it was just a step too late. But, with Shinseki stepping down, it was the thing he did before he left was he put Sharon Hellman and Lance Robinson on administrative leave so they could do no more harm. He could tell that wasn't going to happen unless he wrote the order. And that's what it took. And at that point in time, the following day, the day after, it's like I get a call from the Office of Special Counsel, my attorney there, and he's like, Paula, has anybody called you? Is there any movement on your case? And I said, no, David, haven't heard anything. He goes, well, the people who took you out of your job are out of their jobs. So I think we need to have a conversation with the legal people. And that kind of helped speed up, what was happening to me. Because by this point in time, people still don't know what's happening to me. They're rotating in, PR people and directors. It's just all sad, Mike. It's just so sad.
Before we get into the changes in the VA that have happened because of it, let's talk about you. How was it resolved eventually for you? Yeah,
so after April, and when the secretary resigned, they got a new secretary in August of 2014. The poor guy, he gets there, Bob McDonald. Wonderful man, knew exactly what to do. Him and Undersecretary Sloan Gibson, great Vietnam veterans, run big corporations, knew what to do. They're in the office, and I can't remember if it was Tuesday or Wednesday. All of a sudden, I'm on the front page of the Washington Post.
Wow.
Because the Office of Special Counsel had a PR guy that David, my lawyer, put me in touch with. And he said, I think we need to shine a light on some of this so that we can get your case settled. And I'm on the front page. And the headline is, for whistleblowers, a bold move can lead to the department basement. Yeah. That's the headline. Oh, my gosh, poor Bob. He's like, people told me he had a town hall that day. They were so upset when we read stuff like that. And how can we have any faith or trust in the VA system? He goes, I'm going to Phoenix. I'm going to check it out. I'm going to do this. I sat in the front row when Bob McDonald came. I was there. And I asked him, I said, what? He goes, Ms. Pedene, he goes, I am working diligently on your case. He goes, I thank you for your impeccable service to VA, because he saw it.
Yeah.
And we're working on it. But it took 4 more months before you get settlement. Court is like a long time.
Yeah.
I had no idea how long judicial cases take. They take years. It's sad.
But eventually you were restored.
I was. Well, I never got back to being the public affairs officer at the Phoenix VA. And the reason is the Office of Special Counsel told me that no matter how good of a job I did, no matter how hard I tried to shake the whistleblower mantra, it would never go away. Mm-hmm. And they were right. They actually gave me a promotion and put me in a virtual position in Washington, D.C. So I traveled back and forth from Phoenix to Washington for 5 years and then eventually retired from the VA. But even in VA Central Office, the whistleblower, it's like the scarlet letter.
Sure.
It never goes away.
But within the VA, Senator McCain worked with, of all people, Bernie Sanders, Senator Sanders.
Yep.
And they came together on what was called at the time the choice card.
Yes.
They brought in Tri-West,
yes.
was the implementation of this card. Mm-hmm. And obviously at the beginning, it was not ideal, but it was better than it was. But the VA began to make changes to allow veterans to go outside of the system in certain situations and started started trying to improve. Are you proud of the fact that you and a few other people were the first steps in improvements? I'm not going to say solutions yet, but improvements to the VA?
Yes. I'm so honored and proud to have been a part of that. It never should have happened, but
No.
I'm honored that there were people, Senator McCain, Jeff Flake. There were so many. They really, it's how our country should be. You bridge the gaps between Democrats, Republicans,
especially on an issue that is
independents.
nonpartisan.
Correct. They are veterans. We put our lives on the line to defend our freedom. Now, I was in my husband says the resort Navy, because I was like you. I was a broadcaster. There's many other people.
A resort Navy.
that are driving ships at sea like my husband did. But,
So there's even a little rivalry in your house.
Yes,
That's great.
Yes. But,
that never goes away in the military, does it?
No, it
Okay.
doesn't. But, the veterans, we have your back. We love our country. We love you, the American people, for the majority. We have your back. We're there to serve you 24/7.
But the thing about what I love about that, because in my job, a lot of times it's us against them. It's everybody has opposing views. But what's great about the veterans community, even the most staunch anti-war advocates love the veterans. They respect the people that wear the uniform. They know that they follow orders. So the assumption from the American people, largely on both sides of the aisle, was, of course we take care of the VA takes care of veterans. And of course we're putting our best foot forward and answering the call for their health care. When the country found out that was false, it was when you get McCain
everywhere
and Bernie Sanders agreeing
everywhere.
that well, you know that it's really, but it took exposure because the bureaucracy and the money involved and the power involved, that's a big hill to climb.
It is. And there was many changes that needed to be made. And when you talk about contracting out care, VA doesn't like that. They only like to do that if they really feel they can't do it. Now, they could have met. We were meeting all the measures before these new directors came in. These guys just wanted to kind of fake it, and that was the issue.
And what was most, am I wrong in this? I was told, and I think I read this, that they were getting performance bonuses. That was the biggest part to me, was theirs were the fraud. I was surprised they weren't arrested. I'm put in prison, because if you're falsifying records, it's one thing. But if you're falsifying records and getting a profit from it, that's that definition of fraud.
And killing people.
Yes, people were dying.
Hello. Yeah, so when the FBI came in, we gave them all the evidence. We told them everything. They did an investigation, and the Phoenix report from the FBI, Sam and I were so livid. We still talk about it to this day. Well, we can't exactly connect the dots, and we had the death certificates of 40 patients, that were there. So it was like, come on, how can you not, and then the OIG, well, we can't handle the case for the patients. The patients have to file their own lawsuits because there's federal tort claims that you have to file as a patient. And I was so sorry that they didn't all get together as a class action lawsuit. That would have been helpful, but that never happened. So, yeah, and what they got her on eventually. So, like she had done to me, they took her out of her job, they took away her email, they took away her phone. So it is part of their playbook.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
But they're scouring through her emails on her computer, her work computer, and they find that she's accepting these gifts from her.
I remember that now.
Yes, her lover. She's married. She's got 4 children. She has a lover that's a contractor, a federal contractor, and she's accepting gifts from a federal contractor that VA is doing business with. That's how they got her fired. That was the felony she was charged with. Nothing with the weights. It's like Al Capone.
Yeah, tax evasion.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the VA now, because you're so connected. The Veterans Day Parade and the thing, which I've been involved in a number of times, is one of the most patriotic, amazing days of the year.
It's fun.
is that Veterans Day parade. I love that parade. But your involvement is still there. Your assessment of the VA now, are you happier with where it is now?
No, I wish I could say I was. One of the greatest things I got to do when I worked in VA Central Office was the choice card morphed into what was called the VA Mission Act. And the VA Mission Act of 2019 was unanimously approved by all the veteran service organizations, members of the House, Senate, and Congress, and the President, okay? Gets signed into law. We implement it. We're doing all the public relations for it. My team is. We're standing up websites. We're mailing out brochures to 9 million veterans. We're getting the educational materials into the hands of staff so they know how to implement the Mission Act, what the guidelines call for community care. We're in the situation room at the VA, and on the monitors up ahead there's like 10 panel monitors. You can see Tri-West coming in with all the stand-up because they got the contract for community care. So you can see all across the nation how these little spots are lighting up where we're getting doctors to set for community care. We make the little stickers for the windows that say this is a VA community care provider. We're handing out everything we can to teach people about community care and the Mission Act. There's still posters at the Phoenix VA. I was just there yesterday. They're still there. But do they uphold it? No. They took the entire Mission Act and have pretty much decimated it.
Who is they? Who's done that?
So it is the current leadership. I never really truly blame it on the secretary. I know it's the senior staff in the VA Central Office that doesn't want certain things, or they're budget hawks, and they don't want us spending that much money. And the Undersecretary for Health has gone on the record saying, no, we can't do community care. We need to keep it all in-house.
Community care means that veterans that didn't have access. Let me give you an example.
Oh, I'll give you an example.
Okay, go ahead.
Went to the pain clinic yesterday. I need an injection in some joints. You know when his first available appointment is?
When?
13 months.
13 months?
Mm-hmm. I didn't say anything to him. Checked out. Nobody offered me community care. I did go back to him with an email and say, you really need to offer me community care. So
that community care would mean you could then go outside of the VA system and get it somewhere else. So is something as simple as...
In a less time than 13 months.
Oh, absolutely,
away.
Yeah. And so for like me with health insurance, if I don't feel well on a weekend, if I need an antibiotic, or I go to an urgent care, and my insurance...
That is the one thing of the Mission Act that VA hasn't rescinded yet, is the urgent care. You can still go to any urgent care. You don't have to check with VA.
Why is it, and maybe in Europe, this has been my opinion, and I want to ask yours. I wondered why. I think the American people would be in favor of this. If a veteran had a golden ticket,
yes,
where they could use the VA, because the VA is so good at so many different things.
Yes.
But a veteran could walk into any medical facility with that insurance card and say, I need this.
Right.
And that provider would know that bill was going to be paid for.
It would work, Mike. It's just like Medicare. VA and reimburses on the Medicare rates. It's just like Medicare.
So why not? Is this about power and control?
The infrastructure.
Is it?
Because the third leg of VA's mission is research, hospital. So there's actually three: teaching, research, and care. Okay, so the teaching element, all the residents that get trained at VA hospitals all across the country, the country would lose, because we do train millions of residents.
I have a friend who went through the military medical school and worked as a military doctor, and he worked at a VA hospital, and he is a very successful doctor in Washington, D.C. now, but loved his time in the Army.
Yeah. I mean, the Army, the VA, they're all training. That's part of what they do.
Here in Arizona, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, another doctor that was a Navy doctor. Right now, he's a thriving practice here in Arizona. He's running for Congress.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, he is.
Wow, I should get with him.
You should.
And then the third element that the VA has is research. We our patients, the veterans, are so dedicated that they will sign up for research studies that test drugs. They're in placebo groups. For years, decades. So the three-pronged mission and the infrastructure of VA that we're paying for across the country, I think it's that. I think it's that keeps us in the model that we're in. It would be nice if we could do the gold card. And you know what? They should do the gold card, because then what they could do is they could see what their actual numbers would be. And the other thing VA really needs to look at, and we all need to look at, the veteran population is declining. We had an influx of veterans during the Vietnam and Cold War because many of us were doing singular rotations in times of war.
Right.
Now they go 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So, and we pulled the guard. So the population is declining.
But the other part of it, which is a blessing and a curse in the world of the VA, is because of medical advancements and the field technology, more veterans are living. They're not dying on the battlefield.
They're all living longer.
Right.
And we have figured out so many of the what we call presumptive conditions from their time in service, whether it be the multitude and mix of vaccines, whether it be the toxic gases that they were exposed to in Iraq, the traumatic injuries they've suffered from Afghanistan, all those things, the post-traumatic stress. We have, the VA has so many wonderful things. It's kind of hard to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Which is why I wanted you to talk about those things, because I know from the years that I've known you that you have a deep admiration and love for the VA, that they are good people. And when I talk about it and I'm critical of some of the things that are happening, I almost feel compelled to defend the people at the VA, because I've been there a number of times, and they are just the most dedicated people that love where they work, and they wouldn't want to serve any other community than the veterans.
Yeah.
So when you are talking about what's happening, you're not being critical of everybody in the parking lot and inside those buildings. It's the leadership that's failing. And the people on the inside are just as frustrated.
Yes, they are.
The workers, the employees are just as frustrated.
Yes, because I get calls every day, almost every day, I should say. Now it's down to a couple times a week, from people that don't like things that are happening, or a whistleblower that has an issue in California or Nevada or wherever, and they find my name and contact me. I know other people that are working with the House Veterans Affairs and Senate Veterans Affairs that are hearing from the patients. They're still not happy with the care. And I think that the VA really just needs to kind of come together with everybody and see what we can do to make this work for all.
Do you think we'll get there? Do you think that there will be a breakdown in the bureaucracy to the point where what is in the best interest of the veterans, do you think we can get there?
Unfortunately, the eternal optimist in me would always say yes. The one thing I think standing in the way right now is the billions of dollars we have amped up on the VA over the last decade since this has occurred, and they are not using justly. They are not using rightly. There is no way that VA needs that much money to the detriment of other domestic institutes or agencies in our country. VA has to do a better job at refining what it needs for the patients. All they have to do is do a reset back to when Dr. Kaiser was the Undersecretary for Health. He said, I'm going to lean out VA central office. It's going to go down to maybe 1,000, maybe 900 people. The VISNs, he stood up the Veterans Integrated Networks. They were supposed to be 13 to 15 people. They're now thousands.
Wow.
And you put everything back at the facility. Why would you take thousands of positions, put them in a network office, try to oversee patient care from that point of view, when the patient is never in front of you? And the same for VA central office. They never see a patient there. You've got to put the money to the field. That's where the bread and butter is. And they have lost their way from that position. When we were in that stand, we had a book that was written on us called VA, The Best Care Anywhere. And it was all about the changes that Dr. Kaiser implemented. But he was a strategic leader. He saw the vision for change, the journey for change, and the prescription for change. He wrote 3 papers. all of us employees would read them cover to cover. I mean, it's like a book. It's a little book. But he just told us what he wanted to do, what his vision was. He laid it out, and then he did it. And we went along with him. You don't have strategic leadership. You don't have ethical leadership. And not everywhere, in several places, but not everywhere. And that's what's hurting us, you know.
Do you still love the parade and being
Oh, my
involved?
gosh. So the best thing that happened, Mike, was that Sharon Hellman took the VA parade away from the VA. That was the best thing for me. That was not the best thing for the VA hospital. But that was one of the things. They were looking like they had to bring me back because they had nothing on me.
Right.
So she said, okay, we're going to bring her back. We're going to make her miserable. So even more miserable than what they were making me. So let's take away the parade.
It's like working for Cruella de Vil. I mean, this is...
It was. So she does something of the sort, and I get wind of it, and, David, some guy comes to me and says, you know, they want me to take over the parade. What do you have to do for it? And I told him, I go, you're not going to do it. He goes, no, I'm not. But he wanted to know what it entailed. So I knew what was happening. So I call Rick and I go, Rick Romley, you are never going to guess what they want to do next. And he said, what? And I told him, take away the Veterans Day parade from
Is
the
that
VA
where the route
hospital.
reversal happened?
Yes. Exactly when the route reversal happened. So he calls Dennis Wagner, who, you know, and he calls Greg Stanton, who was mayor at the time. They're like, we're not having this. It's on the front page of the paper. That lasts for weeks.
And so for the people that don't know, the Veterans Day Parade used to start at the VA clinic at 7th Street and Indian School, go north to Camelback, then it would go west to Central, and then it would go north to Bethany Home.
Correct.
And then when all of this happened and they took it away from the VA, you were able to get the route reversed. So now they stage at the church and they just end at 7th Street and Indian School.
Correct. And, you know, it was so funny because it was another one of those little things that makes me smile that's, you know, in my book, A Sacred Duty, that not everybody gets to know, is that I went underground because my lawyers called the regional lawyers and they said, no, whatever she does on her own time is her own time. So I started moving. We used to have the meetings at the VA in the morning, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then everybody would go to work. So they'd get to work about 9. So then I had to move the meetings to 5 o'clock at night. So we'd go from 5 to 6:30. And all the while I'm underground and we're working on the parade. Me, Catherine Brooks, who was the director of Honoring America's Veterans, Greg Stanton's office, and we're making it happen. And, you know, the day that parade took place on November 11th of 2013, I got so many phone calls. Paula, we can't believe you did it. You did it because I had no files. Remember, they had taken away everything. So I'm emailing everybody that was on my team, and some of them had saved stuff, so we were able to rebuild things. It took a year, Mike. I mean, we got that notice in April. It took us from April to October to, you know, everything was so changed, and that is why. And isn't it sad that no longer can we say when we're starting the Veterans Day Parade, we're here at the Phoenix VA Hospital with the start of the Phoenix Veterans Day Parade.
Yeah.
You know?
There are 2 stories about the parade that I will tell you about very quickly. One of them is back when it started at the VA. For some reason, I was asked and given the privilege of riding with the Honorary Grand Marshal. And he was, he's passed away, but he was a code talker.
Oh.
And we were standing in the middle of 7th Street waiting for the parade to start. And all of those Marines were lined up to carry that huge flag at the beginning of the parade. Well, Mr. Kelwood, a Marine, wearing the Navajo garb that you know from the code talkers, the identifying
with his Marine Corps hat.
Yes, with his Marine Corps hat. And he begins to talk to these young Marines. One of them was a young Native girl, and I don't know if she was Hopi or she was Navajo, but she was, you could see she was not just looking at him as a Marine, but her, you know, history. And he begins to tell them stories, and these Marines were captivated. And eventually a crowd kind of got around, and he's very soft-spoken, and he's telling stories. And he gets done telling the stories, and he begins to sing the Marine Corps hymn in Navajo. And about 4 words into it, these Marines begin to sing it in English. I'm starting to cry too. There was not a dry eye in the middle. This was in the middle of 7th Street.
Yeah.
Spontaneously happened. It was one of the most American moments I've ever spent in my life. And that's one of the big memories of that parade, is those moments where, when I was in that car with him, to see the respect that the veterans have for the code talkers, that there would be veterans on the side of the road, some of them in wheelchairs, that would stand when he would go by, when the code talkers would go by. That respect still for the history and the sacrifice. You only see things like that at events like that parade. And without that parade, that would be lost.
People would forget about Veterans Day.
But you certainly would lose those moments, right?
Exactly.
It is an incredible time, and to see parents that still bring their kids.
Yes, I love that.
So the other one is not nearly as profound, but it makes me giggle, because I don't know who else you said this to, but you had to say it to me almost like I was going to do something stupid. Do you remember this? You might not. Maybe
might
you said it
not.
to other people. The honorary Grand Marshal, or the Grand Marshal of the parade, was Loretta Swit.
Okay, celebrity. She's a celebrity Grand Marshal.
Yeah, celebrity Grand Marshal. And all of us remember the show MASH.
Right,
I can still recite the episodes. I watched this show my whole life. And you asked me, would you like to meet her? And I said, of course I'd like to meet her. But do you remember what you said to me before I met her?
No.
You had to remind me not to call her by her nickname.
Oh, do not call her Hot Lips.
Yeah.
She hates that.
Do not call her Hot Lips. And I looked at you like, what makes you think I would do that?
Well, because that people do. They
But
come
I
up
just
to her
thought
and
it might be
call
me,
her
because you know what an idiot I could be.
No.
I would be the one to do it.
I was warning everybody.
But what
It's
a nice
kinda-
lady.
Yeah. She's so phenomenal. We've kept in touch with her. I was in New York for a meeting and had dinner with her. You know, her heart is in the right place for our nation's veterans.
Well, there are a lot of people,
humble person.
but there are a lot of people
too.
that are actors, that are really, well-known actors, that when they feel like they're being pigeonholed in a role, they get standoffish about it. She kind of embraces it. She was so kind to everybody, and I just thought it was terrific. It was great to meet her.
Yeah, she's a wonderful person and truly loves our nation's veterans. She just does, like you do.
Well, I do, and that's is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this with you, because you truly sacrificed twice, and you served your country as a veteran. You serve in the VA. You risked everything to expose what was going on. So before we finish, what's next? What do you have? Because you're not the type of person.
No,
I don't think.
I know.
Your poor husband.
I know. I do. I feel bad for him.
He needs to buy some roller skates.
Right. I know.
But what's next? Because I don't see you slowing down.
No, I retired from the VA and immediately took on the role of executive director of the nonprofit Honoring America's Veterans, and we now put on the Phoenix Veterans Day Parade. Our nonprofit is growing. We have also at the State Department of Veteran Services request took over the Pearl Harbor Day ceremony. That's at Wesley Bolin Plaza. Yeah. And just this year, we're partnering with the VA National Memorial Cemetery of Arizona for their event on May 27th at 8 a.m. out there at the VA National Cemetery.
How excited are you about the nuclear submarine, the USS Arizona?
I'm excited about that. I am.
I had the new captain on my show.
Oh, did you?
To talk about it being built because of the ceremony that was here and the events that were here in town.
The USS Legacy.
It was incredible.
Yes, it was. I was sick, and I was scheduled to go, but I got sick. But yes, I'm excited about that too. And the sale at the Phoenix Indian Steel Park.
Yeah.
So there's many. If people want. The good thing about Arizona, oh my gosh, it's such a wonderful community for our veterans. They come out, they wrap their arms around us, they feel loved and cherished, and I can't encourage them enough.
But the veterans wrap their arms around the community as well. That's another great thing.
We're big players in the community. There's 500,000 in Maricopa County. So, yeah, but I mean, I love the community doing what they do to support us. And please, please, please continue. Come out for the Veterans Day Parade. Come out for Memorial Day. Join us for Pearl Harbor Day ceremony on December 7th. HonoringAmericasVeterans.org is the website. Sign up for our newsletter. We'd love to keep in touch with you.
And the significance in Arizona, obviously because of the USS Arizona at Wesley Bolin Plaza. When those things happen, it does come to life for you. The reality of what happened that day, because of what's at Wesley Bolin Plaza, is significant. It is an amazing time.
It is. It is. And there's so much of our history there. We have the gun barrels from the USS Arizona, which was the start of the war, and from the USS Missouri, where the peace treaty was signed.
When I was the MC this year at the event, who was it that told the story? Ken Bennett.
Yes.
The story of the acquisition of the gun barrels. It is one of the
it's so funny.
Bureaucratic stereotype.
He's calling around for one.
He wants
from
a barrel.
The USS Arizona.
We can't do that. We've only got 2. We can't give you 1.
Right.
But we've also got it from the Missouri.
So if you take that one,
the 2,
we'll give it to you.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
What an amazing story.
But look at how well it worked out for us.
Did.
That's a beautiful memorial down there at Wesley Bolin Plaza. Arizona has a rich history.
It does, and it continues to grow, which I love, and the respect that we pay.
Yes.
I just want to say thanks. The years I've known you, you have been a pillar in this community. You've been so good to the veteran community, and I think your story needs to be told more often because you are one of the people that literally risked everything to make sure that a wrong was righted, and you, in the end, came out a winner. But you know how close it came to it turning the other way.
I do. And, I'm very fortunate because only 1% of whistleblowers really win their cases. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to be a whistleblower. But I believe in it. Telling the truth is something we all need to do. Being a decent person is really, I think, a part of who we all need to be, and stopping evil in its tracks. Got to do it. So if you don't, we become a lesser form of ourselves.
You're the best. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Mike.
I told you this was going to be an incredible story. Paula Pedene is her name. What's the name? What's the title of the book?
Sacred Duty.
Sacred Duty. You've got to read the story and read it at length, but this is a true Arizona hero. And thank you again for doing this.
Anytime.